Hollywood stars. They don't make them like they used to. While there are still many fine actors and actresses working in film and television today, very few had the megawatt star power that used to bring audiences to the theaters from the mid to late 20th century. And as we move further and further away from the golden and silver ages of Tinseltown, the Great Pop Culture Debate podcast wants to determine who was the best classic Hollywood movie star. Like Liz Taylor's White Diamonds, these have always brought me luck. I'm referring, of course, to my ample bosoms. I'm your host, Eric Rezsnyak. Please welcome my panelists for this episode, who are contractually obligated to be here due to their roles in the Great Pop Culture Debate's personal studio system. First up, of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, he walks into mine. It's Derek Mekita.
I'm just here to round up the usual suspects.
Well, I'm shocked to find out that there is podcasting going on here. Next, rumor has it that he slept with every man on the MGM lot, except Lassie. It's Jonny Minogue.
To correct Miss Davis's scurrilous accusations, I would never have slept with Lassie. He was being loaned out to Paramount at the time.
And he would have made you beg for it. And finally, I have to ask my next panelist, Karissa Kloss, why are you in your underwear?
If you thought stealing my jeans would make me wear a skirt, you're sorely mistaken.
Well, I'm happy to loan you a cream for that 7-year itch. And with hair of Harlow gold, we have Bob Erlenbach in the producer booth, keeping a watch on us with his Bette Davis eyes. If you're curious about how we ended up with this Celebrity 16, become a Patreon supporter of the podcast. And don't forget, you can head to greatpopculturedebate.com and find the listener bracket for this episode so you can play along with us at home. It's important to note that for this episode, we are focusing exclusively on Hollywood movie stars who became famous prior to 1970. Even if their fame continued long after that point, and heck, in many cases, it endures. Also, a special shout out to the Redditors over at Reddit's Classic Film Sub, many of whom took the poll that informed this bracket and are a great community for discussing the incredible movies from the early to mid 20th centuries. And with that out of the way, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night as we head into these debates. And yeah, you better buckle up because there's going to be a lot of bad impressions. First up, the panel is evenly split between two legendary leading men, Paul Newman and Cary Grant. Johnny, see if you can hustle up another vote for Newman's own. I will follow my compass north by northwest as I stomp for Cary Grant. Johnny, please go first.
Paul Newman is more than just salad dressings and cocktail mixers. I mean, juices. Sorry. Paul Newman is the Renaissance man of the golden age of Hollywood. I mean, so he was not only just matinee idol good looks, but he started his career all the way back in 1954 with a movie called The Golden Chalice. He got a Golden Globe nominations, but he then referred as his worst movie of the 50s. But he picked up from there. So some of his early starts with movies like Cat on the Hot Tin Roof with Liz Taylor, his role of Brick, the alcoholic football hero. He does very well in these golden boy roles, but takes it into a different way. He is more than just something that was pretty, obviously, because he lasted for nearly 50 years. Other movies of his that were undeniable: Cool Hand Luke, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid back in 1969. I think The Sting was one of my favorites, and also starring a Harold Gould who played Rose Nyland's boyfriend on The Golden Girls. And I thought about that in many years later when he was trying to be compared to Paul Newman. I go, you guys know each other. But he also reached out beyond just movies. He also, and this is one of the things I took in my rubric, was that what is your long-standing mark on not only just Hollywood, but life? And so I think one of the things he's done more is philanthropy, food, sports car racing, and just overall good person. Yeah, so.
Oh, I love that. So let me first say this. I love Paul Newman. I have such respect for Paul Newman as both an actor and philanthropist. Kevin Rice, a longtime friend of this podcast, works with the camp that Paul Newman helped to found that supports children living with cancer. He was an incredible human being. And so please understand that my vote against Paul Newman here is really not against Paul Newman. It's for Cary Grant. So first, a little disclaimer that I am not a classic movie expert. And I don't think any of my panelists are. We are people who love classic movies, but you're not going to get an academic reading. This is really more of a Turner class. You're not getting Turner classic movies here. As Jonny Minogue said, you're
getting Tina Turner classic movies here.
That's right, Mary. And we're proud of it. So let me say that my rubric had 3 specific points, and I will bring this up with every single argument I make. Number 1, body of work. What was their actual contributions to Hollywood? Number 2, accolades. And number 3, star power past and present. So for Mr. Cary Grant, between the 30s and 60s, Cary Grant starred in more than 70 films, working with some of the greatest directors of all time. Alfred Hitchcock, Frank Capra, George Cukor, Howard Hawks, becoming one of Hollywood's definitive leading men. He had incredible range, starting off in crime pictures and finding fame in screwball comedies, then segueing into dramas and thrillers. His performances had an ease about them, an unforced charm and confidence that captured the camera. Among his best-known pictures, His Girl Friday, Bringing Up Baby, The Philadelphia Story, To Catch a Thief, North by Northwest, Charade. Accolades: 2 Oscar noms and an honorary Oscar in 1970, Kennedy Center honor, number 2 male star on the American Film Institute's 100 Years, 100 Stars list. We'll get to that a lot this episode. And star power past and present. He was a huge star at the time, and he remains well regarded today, although I don't know how long that lasts because I don't feel like he's in the conversation much in the 21st century. I also tried to think about what their modern Hollywood analog would be, and to me, the modern version of Cary Grant is George Clooney. Like, to me, they're very similar kind of molds. That being said, putting it to a vote, Derek, who are you with? Paul Newman or Cary Grant?
I think I'm still with Cary Grant because I cannot name a more iconic mid-Atlantic accent in film, so that will be my rubric for this particular matchup.
All right. Karissa Kloss, where are you on this one?
I'm still with Paul Newman because my rubric is really similar to yours, but one of the things is cultural impact, and his charitable work, his political activism, all of that puts him up for me. Plus, he gave us the line, who nobody can eat 50 hard-boiled eggs. Like, it's amazing. So I love Paul Newman. I love Cool Hand Luke, and he's my pick.
Well, on a minisode, we go to tiebreakers, and typically I'm the first one. And guess what? I'm going to throw this a wrench in the script. I'm throwing it to Paul Newman because I feel like it, and also because I agree. As I did more of my research and arguments here, the charitable component, what they did outside of film, really did hold weight, and I'm going to come back to that later on. So we're moving Paul Newman into round 2. Next, the majority of the panel wants to continue draping themselves in Judy Garland, but Karissa continues to be spellbound by Ingrid Bergman. Derek, meet me in St. Louis and bring the votes for Judy with you. Karissa, gaslight us into voting for Bergman. Karissa, please go first.
I understand that I'm outnumbered here, and that's okay. But I hate the movie Casablanca. I hate it so much, and I've seen it so many times. Yeah, I definitely talked about this in the Oscar one too. But what I do like about it is Ingrid Bergman, especially that eyelight. She is so beautiful. She was in iconic films that are still constantly referenced. Casablanca and Gaslight, Spellbound she was in Joan of Arc. But what's really great about her is that she's Swedish and she had a 5-decade career. She spoke and acted in 5 languages, which is hella impressive. But also she had an affair with director Roberto Rossellini. And when that became public, it was kind of a big deal. And she ended up being denounced on the U.S. Senate floor for her part in the assault on the institution of marriage. So anyone who is on the wrong side of the U.S. Congress is going to get my pick. So I just think she's really cool. We don't talk about her that much, and I understand, but she deserves at least some flowers here.
I love it. Anyone who's on the wrong side of the U.S. Senate is on the right side of me. This is an audio medium, so you couldn't see me doing an aggressive jerk-off move when Karissa was referencing that. But that being said, Derek, talk to us about Judy.
So yes, I see all that, and I raise you Judy Garland. Am I gay and voting for Judy Garland? Why, yes, I am. It really boils down to this. There are very few stars in these brackets who crossed successfully between film, television, the stage, and a widely successful recording career. It is not hyperbole to say that Frances Ethel Gum gave the world her all. From her iconic turn as Dorothy in 1939's The Wizard of Oz, to Meet Me in St. Louis, to Easter Parade, to A Star is Born, the original. Judy captivated audiences around the world from a very young age, and though her life took some very tragic twists and turns, I can't imagine the American pop culture lexicon without her. No Judy, no Liza. No Judy, no Jinx giving us the, spoiler, best RuPaul's Drag Race Snatch Game performance of all time. So I choose to forget my troubles, advise you all to come on, get happy, and move Miss Garland on to the next round.
Love it. Johnny, where are you on this one?
Pro for Ingrid Bergman, Isabella Rossellini. Pro for Judy, shiny shoes. I'm going with shiny shoes.
I think Isabella Rossellini is both incredibly talented and stunning.
She is.
And I still have to give it to Judy Garland. And it's not just because I'm gay. I think that in terms of star power, even now, God, decades after her death, it's still Judy. So we will be moving Judy Garland into round 2. Next, the majority of the panel wants to make sure that Humphrey Bogart doesn't end up in a lonely place. But I'd like to continue dancing on air with Fred Astaire. Derek, why are Bogey's chances in this debate worth more than just a hill of beans? I will put on my top hat and make a funny face in honor of Fred Astaire. I'll go first. Body of work. Fred Astaire starred in more than 40 films, most of them musicals, between the 1930s and 1980s. He is one of the premier dancers and choreographers of Hollywood's golden age. Among his most well-known films are Top Hat, Holiday Inn, Easter Parade, Funny Face, and in a non-musical supporting role, The Towering Inferno, for which he received an Oscar nomination. Accolades: 1 Oscar nomination, 1 honorary Oscar in 1949 at the peak of his career, which is exceptional, for his extraordinary artistry, and the Cecil B. DeMille Award at the 1960 Golden Globes. He is the 5th greatest male star on the AFI 100 Years 100 star lists. Star power past and present. Hollywood legend says that an early RKO screen test of Astaire was graded can't act, can't sing, balding, can dance a little, and yet he became a critical star of the golden age of Hollywood. But would he have been able to do so without his partners, Ginger Rogers most specifically, and before her, his sister, who was his original longtime dance partner and was arguably the better one of the pair? He didn't really play the Hollywood game and lived a fairly quiet life. I do think he has more name recognition with modern audiences than Humphrey Bogart, but maybe I'm wrong about that. There is no modern analog to Fred Astaire. We do not have stars like him anymore. Tom Holland is reportedly working on an Astaire biopic. I am ghastly, just fascinated to see how that's going to turn out. But I think Fred Astaire is an artist, incredible. If we were doing a list of the top dancers in Hollywood, absolutely would be Fred Astaire. But he's up against Humphrey Bogart. I'm going to go around the horn and see, have I changed anyone's opinion? Derek, you sticking with Bogey, or are you going to do your argument?
It's Bogey for me.
Karissa.
Bogey.
Johnny.
Bogey.
All right, so Fred Astaire will be out, and we are moving Humphrey Bogart into round 2. Up next, the critics agree. We have 2 unanimous victories as Katharine Hepburn, Mildred pierced the chances of Joan Crawford, and Elizabeth Taylor conquered Jimmy Stewart as Cleopatra herself would have wanted. But Derek, you wanted to mention something about Jimmy Stewart before we moved on.
He's definitely a strong contender for the most prolific classic Hollywood star. Jimmy Stewart appeared in 80 films over his long career, which spanned 1935 to 1991. That is a huge chunk of Hollywood history. He's obviously most fondly remembered for American audiences as It's a Wonderful Life, for some required annual viewing around the holidays. So he also has the distinction of being Carol Burnett's favorite movie star, which in my book means he's solid gold. I think he's only going out here because he's up against the incandescence of Elizabeth Taylor. I suspect if he were matched up against some of our other top 16, he might have stood a fighting chance, but
I agree with that 100%. We're talking about modern Hollywood analogs. He's the Tom Hanks of the golden age of Hollywood, I think.
For sure.
Jonny Minogue, before Jimmy Stewart left, you did want to do at least some bad Jimmy Stewart impressions.
Oh, there's no bad Jimmy Stewart impressions. There's only good ones, and not in my house, and in your house, and in your house.
That was not a bad Jimmy Stewart impression. That was great. Thank you very much. Speaking of bad impressions, I'd like to open it up to this panel of homosexuals. Does anyone want to talk about Joan Crawford? I mean, it's shocking in a gay-oriented podcast that Joan Crawford is going out in round 1, but she's going up against Katharine fucking Hepburn.
And that's exactly it.
But I do think we need to talk about Joan. I think Joan actually has quite good name recognition to this day. I think people actually might respect Joan more now than they did not only when she was alive, but certainly right after she died. When I've read a bunch of articles where people were like, that Mommy Dearest book and then the movie about it, which is what a lot of people know her from, was super salacious and was deeply damning to her in a way that was not fair. If we're looking at her just on the merits of her acting career. She was a very good actress, and I don't think she is given the respect that she's entitled to. So I do want to say we love you, Joan Crawford, and we think you're the best. A Pepsi to Joan Crawford. Next, the panel is evenly split between two idols of the 60s, Audrey Hepburn and Marilyn Monroe. Johnny, tell us why more than gentlemen prefer blondes and Marilyn Monroe. Karissa, take a woman holiday as you push for Audrey Hepburn. Johnny, please go first.
I don't think that there's much more I can say about Marilyn Monroe that hasn't already been said. She is more than just a movie star. She is a cultural icon in so many ways. She is the archetype for the blonde bombshell. She set that as every man's fantasy in the early days of Hollywood, from the 40s when she started as Norma Jean Baker up until the end of her career in 1962. She played the dumb blonde, but she wasn't the dumb blonde. She started because of his overzealous stage mom, just like Judy Garland. It's surprised she only appeared in 29 films, spanning from 1947 to 61. One of her early was All About Eve. She got eaten alive by Bette Davis, who was very happy about the last round, having Joan going out with unanimously. Films like Niagara, which is film noir. You mentioned Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which has influenced other artists, Madonna, How to Marry a Millionaire, Some Like It Hot, 7 Year Itch. I mean, that you can just even think about 7 Year Itch and you think about a subway blowing air up. Anytime you walk across a subway grate in New York City, you think of 7 Year Itch. Even her last film, which got really badly panned, The Misfits with Clark Gable, ended up becoming one of the best movies of the 60s. And both of the last films for both Clark Gable and for Marilyn Monroe, she fought the Hollywood system. She refused to be bowled over by them. And that took a career hit for her. But since she has 60 years since her passing, she has influenced movies, music, style, art. I don't think that there was a more iconic and memorable person to come out of the movie industry in the 20th century. Thank you, Mr. President.
That's a great argument. Thank you so much, Johnny. Karissa, talk to us about Audrey Hepburn.
This was my hardest matchup in the whole bracket because these two actors check a lot of the same boxes. Like, Audrey was a completely different kind of star from Marilyn. She was thin, she had dark hair, but she's the same level of style icon. She was part of the Dutch Nazi resistance as a teenager. She would they would smuggle messages in their shoes because they figured no one was going to check little kids' shoes going across the border. She always was kind of cultural, but countercultural. Growing up during World War II, she was very malnourished, and so part of what sends her over Marilyn for me is her cultural impact and her kind of her advocacy work. She joined UNICEF and she got $60 million from Congress in a few minutes by just talking about how children should not starve around the world. When she retired from acting, she dove headfirst into activism. She was a family person, but she was also a star. She was an actress, but she was the kind of star that other stars were starstruck around. And she was so down to earth and real. She knew that she wasn't a great actress or singer or any of the things, even dancing. But she was really humble about it and she tried very hard. So anyway, she's just such a style icon still to this day that I have to elevate her above Marilyn. But man, that was hard.
This is a brutal matchup. Derek, where are you on this one?
So I'm still with Audrey, and it really comes down to two films, Breakfast at Tiffany's and My Fair Lady. With all due respect to Dame Julie Andrews, Audrey Hepburn is just perfection in that film.
So I'm sticking with Marilyn. I agree with everything both of you said. These are really icons, both of them, in their own way. I mean, they really are. What has struck me in the past few years is seeing how much Marilyn is still so pervasive in pop culture even now. I recently was watching the Tommy movie from the 1970s, and the whole time they're in the church of pop culture, which will heal Tommy. this giant Marilyn Monroe statue is the thing they're all worshiping. Like the level of iconography for her, I agree with Jonny, it has inspired generations. She's some mates that like, this is what Hollywood beauty, glamour, sex is, and it will heal you. And you know, Bombshell and the whole thing with Smash, that whole show, like it really made me appreciate her more. It doesn't matter, it's a tie, and at this point, alphabetically, it goes to Derek Mekita. Derek Mekita, who moves forward here?
Audrey is moving forward.
Okay, Audrey Hepburn will move forward, but really good job, Jonny, arguing against and pushing forward for Marilyn too. Next, the panel is currently poised to advance Bette Davis, but Derek would like at least one dance with Gene Kelly. Derek, start singing, with or without the rain. For Mr. Kelly, I will explain why you can forget Eve. It's really all about Bette Davis. Derek, please go first.
So I know I'm in the minority here, and I'm fine moving Bette Davis forward. I just wanted to give Gene Kelly his due, just like we gave Fred Astaire his due. Gene Kelly's talents seemingly knew no bounds. He was an actor, a dancer, a choreographer, a singer, a director. He won countless awards for his performances in a career that spanned over 6 decades. And I think it was because he brought a lightness and a charm and a warmth to every role he played, and honestly was instrumental in the success of bringing musicals to film. The list is a mile long: An American in Paris, Anchors Away, On the Town, Singing in the Rain. But he is also perhaps best known for boogieing on roller skates with Olivia Newton-John in 1980's Xanadu, at least if we judge him by Eric's standards of film and musical excellence. So that's what I'm going to say about Gene.
Where is the lie? Is Gene Kelly also the director of Hello, Dolly?
Yes.
Is it Gene Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah, and famously he and Barbara hated each other, but I love that. It is 3 against 1. Has he swayed anyone? Jonny, are you sticking with Bette Davis?
Of course, darling, I am.
And Karissa, Bette Davis or Mr. Kelly?
I'm still with Bette Davis.
I'm also still with Bette Davis. I think you did a great job speaking on Gene Kelly, Derek, but we will be moving Bette Davis into round 2. Finally, in round 1, the panel is evenly split between Gregory Peck and Barbara Stanwyck. Derek, Save the Mockingbird and Mr. Peck. Jonny, explain why Barbara has at least single indemnity in this round, and she should advance in the bracket. Jonny, please go first.
For some people, they may not only know the name Barbara Stanwyck as a cutaway gag from Family Guy, where Barbara Stanwyck and I used to ride the trolley. One of the things that maybe remember her. In her day, Barbara Stanwyck would have likely been voted the biggest Hollywood star. She had a career that started in the Ziegfeld Follies in the 1920s. She was a silent film actress in one film, at least, Broadway Nights. And then she moved over to talkies, where a lot of people did not make that jump. And she did 91 feature films. She was in some pre-Hays Code films such as Babyface and The Bitter Tea of General Yen, where she really did some sultry work. A lot of her work in the initial years of from the pre-Hays days were very sultry. And she went that way even more so in some of the film noir films like Double Indemnity. Phyllis Dietrichson, that's the archetype of the blonde femme fatale. I'm thinking, remember the first time I seen Kim Basinger basically do her versus in Veronica Lake. Barbara Stanwyck, you may not know her name, but she was that archetype for the people who are under the age of 50. Sorry, wrong number. Another film noir classic. She jumped into TV in the 50s and 60s doing a lot of westerns and working with folks like Ronald Reagan and doing the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as a Maverick Queen. She was very popular with her contemporaries, going from folks like Jimmy Stewart, Joan Crawford, to Gary Cooper, and even Linda Evans. So she crossed many, many decades. So Barbara Stanwyck, I will take the trolley with you any day.
So, Jonny, I'm going to admit something here. When we were working on this episode, at first I was like, Barbara Stanwyck? How did Barbara Stanwyck make this top 16 over many of the people that we mentioned in our warm-up did not? You just did an excellent job explaining why Barbara Stanwyck is in here, and I thank you for a very good argument. That being said, Derek, talk to us about Gregory Peck.
So I'm particularly excited to talk about Gregory Peck now that Cary Grant is no longer in the running. Gregory Peck, the man played Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. He deserves to move forward. But in all seriousness, Gregory Peck was a fantastic leading man in classic Hollywood cinema, from The Keys of the Kingdom to Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound, Roman Holiday, where he starred opposite Audrey Hepburn, The Valley of Decision, Cape Fear, The Omen, and so many others. He was a reliably bankable star with chiseled good looks, which delightfully he has passed on to his grandson Ethan, who is now playing sexy Spock on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. He won countless awards for his performances, and what struck me in reviewing his CV for our research, while he may have been an obvious leading man, the roles that he played over his career were very varied. He never seemed to get overly typecast, and as such, he was able to show kind of his range and depth in a way that some other stars in the brackets sadly were never able to. So yeah, I do think Gregory Peck should move forward here.
I think these are great arguments, and this is a very difficult decision. Karissa, where are you on this one?
I'm still with Barbara Stanwyck. I love her. She's done all the things. Talking about making leaps. She did screwball comedies. She did a film noir, and she was a femme fatale. She, in 1944, was the highest paid U.S. actress. I love her. I got to go with her.
I would still stick with Gregory Peck here, which means it's a split decision. Jonny Minogue, you're the tiebreaker. Who moves forward?
I'm going to stay with Barbara Stanwyck on this one.
Yay.
All right. So there we go. That's the end for round one, folks. We're going to take a quick break to track down that vulture Hedda Hopper and give her the what for about those scandalous lies she's been publishing about us. We'll be right back. These days, there's so much great TV. Sometimes you just don't have the time to tune in, but you're still itching to know what happened. Or maybe you watched the episode and just want to yell into the void and see if others agree. Well, if you aren't reading our episode recaps, you're only getting 3/4 of the story. The Great Pop Culture Debate publishes weekly recaps of some of your favorite television franchises, so you can stay up to date without even watching. Head over to greatpopculturedebate.com and make sure you never miss a moment. And we are back for round two of our Best Classic Hollywood Star Debate. Before we get into the Elite Eight, I want our panelists to share their social media, what else they're working on, and how they first became acquainted with classic films. Derek, do you mind go first?
Sure. You could find me on Instagram and Threads at DRKMKT. I am not currently working on anything, but the way that I got introduced to classic cinema, I think, was because I'm a millennial that was raised by boomers who were raised by silent generation. They were kind of growing up in a time where a lot of the classic films were getting repeated on television. This was before the days of like Turner Classic Movies and all the cable channels. So I kind of got exposure that way. So between my grandparents and my parents, you kind of get a lot of that from osmosis, I think.
Thank you very much. Jonny Minogue, your socials, what are you working on, and how did you become acquainted with classic films?
I am Jonny Minogue on pretty much everything. It's all one word, no H, Minogue like Kylie and Danny. I am, as every week, work on Tuesday nights at Club Cafe in Boston, Massachusetts, hosting trivia, 8 p.m. And just come and visit clubcafe.com to reserve your table. And I will also be, by the time this is out, I will be appearing in the Houseboy by the Bay video for Airplane Mode. So check that out on YouTube and wherever you get your music. And I first got acquainted, similar to Derek, it was through my boomer parents, more my mother. I've already mentioned her with Paul Newman, but she was a huge Gone with the Wind fan. She still is in love with Clark Gable, even though he's been dead, and it was dead at that point for many decades, and Katharine Hepburn. So I got in through her and just the allure and the mid-Atlantic accent of it all.
Great. Thank you very much. Karissa, socials, what else are you working on, and how'd you get into classic films?
You can find me on Instagram at Karissa Kloss. And if you want to talk to me about something, you should join our Patreon and become part of the Discord. Very active there, talking with everybody about all kinds of stuff, pop culture related. I am still working on sewing my trouser wardrobe of my dreams. And this episode lit a little more of a fire to keep doing it. And I did grow up in the days of Turner Classic Movies, and I used to just take Sunday or Saturday, one day of the weekend, and just like hang out in the basement by myself, watching whatever was on. So some of my favorite movies by some of these stars are not maybe what you would think. My favorite Audrey Hepburn movie is How to Steal a Million, which is like an art museum theft. One of my favorite Marilyns is Niagara, as Jonny mentioned earlier. It's very different from a lot of the other stuff. So that's how I kind of came to know all these stars, and it's been really fun to revisit.
Love it. And I think it's been such a hoot for all of us to be chatting about this. It's a topic I've wanted to do for a while, so thank you for listening to us talk about it. You can find me at Eric Rezsnyak on Instagram, or just message at Great Pop Culture Debate on Insta or TikTok, or at GPCD on Mastodon. But what you really need to do right now is sign up for our weekly newsletter, new every Monday at noon, and it tells you about everything new in pop culture that week. Sign up by finding the link on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or via our link tree on any of our social media accounts. I came to classic films via my maternal grandmother, who was not the most pleasant human being, if I'm being candid. And when they would come visit, she would just sit in the orange corduroy recliner with her giant jug of sweet tea and put on Turner Classic Movies and not speak to anyone. She was obsessed with classic Hollywood the way that I'm obsessed with current pop culture. And now, as you know, a Gen Xer in his mid-40s, I regret that I did not find a way for us to talk about that more, because she had the gossip, she had the tea, she knew everything about the golden age of Hollywood and all the scandals, and I think we would have had a good time cutting up and having a kiki, because I actually think we have a lot of similarities. But that being said, we are going to move into round two and get moving with these debates before Louis B. Mayer demands that we return to the lot. First, several members of the panel want Paul Newman to bring his sting into the final four, but Jonny wants us to go somewhere over the rainbow with Judy Garland. I'm going to go around the horn here, see where everybody else voted. Derek, is it Judy Garland or is it Paul Newman for you?
I am still with Judy Garland.
Jonny, you're sticking with Judy?
I am sticking with Judy. Is this my microphone?
Is this on? Is this my camera? Karissa, where are you?
Yeah, I understand. I'm on a panel with a bunch of homosexuals, but Paul Newman was a star. His relationship with Joanne Woodward is something that's very storied. There was just a docuseries about that last year, I think. Ethan Hawke did. Yep. He was a family man with a private life. We all know about the Newman's Own stuff, but he was a Democrat on Nixon's enemies list. So that's a check for me. He also formed an artist production company with Sidney Poitier and Barbara Streisand, and bought himself out of his studio contract for $500,000. So he's very iconic, a Hollywood star for me, but I understand that I'm up against three homosexuals who love Judy Garland.
I gotta be honest with you, everything you just said actually is having an impact on me. And one other thing that I will say here, doing my research for this, I was watching biographies on Paul Newman, and the way that he as an actor evolved from initially he was having, I think Jonny was in the first round mentioning he was those Golden Boys roles, but they were always bruised Golden Boys, right? They were always slightly off. And then the way that he changed over the course of his career to really show kind of the lifespan of not just him, but his characters, I think is really interesting. Now, Judy didn't have that opportunity. She did segue very successfully from child actor to adult actor, which is something very few can do. But I do think the charitable work that Paul Newman did and his range of actual screen work, I actually think I'm going to make it a tie, which means Karissa gets to be the tiebreaker.
Holy shit. All right. Well, I'm just going to say Paul Newman then, because, you know, what they say is like if a lesbian thinks that a man is hot, then he's actually hot. So
Paul Newman. This is an audio medium, so you couldn't see Derek Mekita literally mouth the words, "Oh wow," when that decision happened. Jonny and Derek, are we accepting of Judy going out at the Elite Eight?
Sure, why not?
Well, we can console ourselves with a Candy Muse sandwich, like she likes to make for Liza when she's cranky. All right, so we'll move Paul Newman into the final four. Next, our unanimous victors from round one continue their bracket dominance, as the panel has already decided that Katharine Hepburn really is the queen, African or otherwise, compared to her co-star Humphrey Bogart, and Elizabeth Taylor was not at all afraid of Audrey Hepburn, meaning both Katharine and Liz advanced to the final four, but I do want to open up for discussion about both Audrey Mystery, and Bogey. We haven't talked that much about Bogey specifically. Derek, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned American Film Institute before. They ranked Humphrey Bogart as the greatest male star of classic American cinema. So he was another one that was gone way too soon. He was cut down by cancer at 57, which is just so awful. But some of his exceptional performances included The Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep, the original Sabrina, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, The Caine Mutiny, The African Queen, where he starred opposite Katharine Hepburn and in a role that won him an Oscar. But his greatest contribution to Hollywood may have just been his turn as Rick in 1942's Casablanca, which still holds the distinction as being one of the greatest films of all time and one of the greatest love stories ever told, opposite Ingrid Bergman as Ilsa. Against Katharine Hepburn, this is the right matchup for him to go out, I guess.
Yeah. The pants, we see who wears them in this particular situation. All right, so we will be moving Katharine Hepburn and Liz Taylor into the final four. Finally, in round two, the majority of the panel has its eyes on Bette Davis, whose Jezebel-like ways proved too much for Barbara Stanwyck, but Karissa has something to say about Barbara. Karissa, go ahead and take it.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed that she's going out. I get it. But one of the things that I learned about her when I was doing my research is that she had a reputation of being very kind to the crew on everything she worked on. She knew about people's families and their kids' names. And she was just like, from what I gather, very, very pleasant. And everybody loved working with her. And we don't really hear those kinds of stories about these people. So that just, made me like her even a little bit more. But I understand the Bette Davis of it all.
The Bette Davis of it all, indeed. So we will be moving Bette Davis into the final four. And with that, we're going to take a quick break to have a gay old time at one of Kate Hepburn's very secret backyard shindigs. We'll be right back after these messages.
Psst. Hey, need more pop culture content? Are you jonesing for another hit of nostalgia? Like a back alley crack dealer, the Great Pop Culture Debate has you covered. After you've listened to this week's episode, head over to the bonus section on greatpopculturedebate.com and check out our top 10 lists, the perfectly satisfying nibble of related content that will keep you coming back for more. Disagree with our rankings? That's okay. Everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion.
And we are back with the final four of our best classic Hollywood star debate. At this point in the show, I always like to take a step back and decide whether or not this is where I thought we'd be ending up. This one was a crapshoot. We had several people advance that I don't think anyone was expecting to do. I certainly did not. But Karissa, this is your actual final four.
I know, it's kind of crazy, right? I had Paul Newman versus Katharine Hepburn, and then Elizabeth Taylor versus Bette Davis. So excited for us to get into it.
Well, I think we say this sometimes on this podcast, legends only, but this is literally legends only. And so I'm really excited to get into these debates. First up, it is Paul Newman versus Katharine Hepburn. I'm going to go around the horn. I'm going to start at the back of the pack with Karissa. Is it Paul or is it Katharine?
I know I've stumped for Paul up to this point, but this is where I just completely bail. It's Katharine Hepburn for me.
Jonny Minogue.
Battle of the Nutmeggers right here. I'm going with Katharine Hepburn.
And Derek Mekita.
Yeah, I think it was inevitable that no matter who you were putting up against Katharine Hepburn, it was going to be Katharine Hepburn.
I'll make it a clean sweep, but I would love it if someone would speak a little bit about why we're putting Katharine Hepburn first, because we haven't really talked that much about her. And she is kind of an iconoclast when it comes to Hollywood. And by kind of an iconoclast, I mean she is very much a different kind of actress, a different type of movie star, a different type of celebrity. Karissa, do you have anything you want to say?
I have so much to say about her, but she's the kind of star that I think would be highly respected now. She treated herself as a star in all of her negotiations. She was very financially smart and savvy. The Philadelphia Story, she had seen the play and bought the film rights to it before because she knew it was going to be a hit. And part of that was that she got to star in it. And that really kind of reinvigorated a career. But also she wore pants. And it was such a big deal. That was referenced in my entrance line, but also there was one time she was going to London and the hotel informed her that women were not allowed in the lobby in slacks. And she said, okay, I'll just use the service entrance. Like she gave zero fucks. She rode a bike to work And she had that really long affair with Spencer Tracy. She just is kind of the epitome of old Hollywood star, but not in a pushover kind of way. So I think of her as kind of a feminist icon.
For sure. Absolutely. And so Paul Newman has had a great run in this bracket, and I think he should be proud. But we are going to move Katharine Hepburn to the final two. Next, it's Elizabeth Taylor versus Bette Davis. I'm going to start this time with Derek. Where are you on this one?
It is Elizabeth Taylor.
Jonny Minogue.
I'm going with Bette Davis.
Ooh, and Karissa Kloss.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah, I'm going for Liz Taylor too. And if I may, I would like to take a moment to talk about Liz, because we haven't talked about her either. And I'm going to pop off because I'm going to tip my hat. Liz is my final pick for this whole thing. I don't care either way, because this final two, Katharine Hepburn, Liz Taylor, it's the right decision regardless. That being said, we're not having a tie. My main argument here is that Liz Taylor's life is more dramatic than any film she ever appeared in, with the possible exception of Cleopatra. In addition to being a successful, respected actor for literally half of the 20th century, she was a capital C celebrity and a tabloid fixation from the 1950s through the 2000s. Angelina Jolie could literally never. Heartbreaks and divorces, home wrecking, battles with addiction, incredible pioneering charity work, illnesses that brought her to the brink of death, one of the first major celebrities to monetize her brand via perfume lines, the jewelry book, etc. Liz Taylor is Hollywood. Liz Taylor is celebrity. Let's talk about her body of work here. From 1942 to 1994, that's 52 years if you're keeping track, she appeared in more than 50 films. She started out as a child actress and became a sensation following her breakout role in National Velvet. She then transitioned to teen stardom and then full-blown big screen idol, and all in very public view. No easy feat. She was the first female star to ever receive a salary in excess of $1 million for Cleopatra. Among her other best-known films are The Taming of the Shrew, Butterfield 8, Suddenly Last Summer, which is wild if you've never seen it. I literally was walking past the TV and it was on, and I stopped and sat there for the rest of the 2 hours to watch this movie, although I had no intention of doing it. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Giant, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. In the 1980s, he transitioned to civic leadership as the co-founder for the American Foundation for AIDS Research and founding the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, raising millions and speaking passionately about a scourge that many in Hollywood and beyond were content to ignore. She's a bona fide icon in a way that I don't think anyone besides Marilyn Monroe was in this debate. So we have 3 for Liz, 1 for Bette Davis. Jonny, do you want to talk about Bette Davis as she appears to be going out now?
Yeah, I can talk about Bette Davis. I mean, she was one of the first actresses in the talking era to really make her stamp. She had 2 Academy Award wins in her career. She really had multiple comebacks. This was a comeback queen. She had success in the 30s, lost it in the 40s, came back with All About Eve in 1950 when everyone thought she was done. And then through the 50s, her career spouted out, and then came back in 1962 with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And then she was able to springboard into television movies and becoming the grande dame of Hollywood in the 80s. She just has a legacy that lasts forever throughout the entire 20th century. And to this day, I mean, thanks to her feud with Joan Crawford, she is now known with the younger people. I'm glad she went this far. I think it's harder to really go up against someone like Elizabeth Taylor because of her still impact with the things that she did with AMFAR and AIDS. And I want to believe the Kathy Ireland stories too, that Liz Taylor had a pharmacy of illegal drugs in her house. So I want to believe that, but I'm happy that Bette Davis made it this far. But she would be as pissed as she was that she wasn't the first to win 3 Academy Awards. That was Katharine Hepburn. It
was. And I will say, though, Bette Davis, I think, is more famous now than she was for 40 years prior. And I don't see that star dimming anytime soon. She is a dame in every sense of the word. And we were lucky to have her. But final 2, Katharine Hepburn, Liz Taylor. I'm going to start in the middle of the pack. Jonny Minogue, where are you going?
I'm going with Kate, my fellow resident of West Hartford, Connecticut. Other than neither of us are there. But yeah, I can talk more about her if you want, but we might leave that for later. Derek Mekita, it's Liz versus Kate. Where are you going?
Yeah, I'm still with Katharine Hepburn because countless stars in these brackets have had the privilege of playing opposite Katharine, to me, she brought a singular gravitas to each and every role in a way that the others wish they could match.
Great point. She was really a co-star on most of the other top 16, wasn't she? Karissa Kloss, where are you?
I'm still with Katharine Hepburn and her pants. For all of what Derek was saying and Jonny too, she's an icon to me, and I love her.
I will stick with Liz Taylor. I just think in terms of actual star, nobody was a bigger star than Liz Taylor for decades. Like, I remember reading Star magazine from, the tabloid, right? Like, she was a sensation through the 90s with the Larry Fortensky stuff. Like, everyone was fascinated by her life, and she didn't court it necessarily, but we were all completely fixated on her for decades. And I think that to me is what a movie star is. But it doesn't matter. 3-1. The winner is Katharine Hepburn. So that is our pick for the best classic Hollywood star. Do you agree? Do you think that we're box office poison? Tell us how you really feel by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or Mastodon. While you're there, make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you can hear about what new debates are coming soon, vote in open polls, and even decide which topics we tackle next. If you really enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to like and rate on whatever platform you listen on. I want to say thank you to my panel. You each deserve a star on the Walk of Fame. And thank you for listening. If you loved what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can get even more exclusive content and get episodes a whole day early. We hope you have a good one. And remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille.